You step onto a treadmill at the gym, press start, and voluntarily do something that once had a much darker job description. The belt hums. The console asks if you want a hill program. Your shoes begin the classic human bargain. Work very hard, go absolutely nowhere. Somewhere in the public family tree of this machine is a huge wooden prison treadwheel, built to make inmates climb in place for hours. That does not mean your modern motorized treadmill is literally a Victorian prison machine with cup holders added. The gym treadmill came later, shaped by medicine, fitness culture, electric motors, and the strange belief that suffering becomes healthier when a screen tracks it. But the treadmill's early reputation was grim. The named prison connection arrives in 1818 at Bury St. Edmunds Jail in Suffolk. An English engineer named Sir William Cubitt introduced a prison treadwheel there as a form of hard labor. Cubitt did not invent the general idea of people or animals walking on wheels. Treadwheels were older than that. His important move was fitting the treadwheel into a prison system that wanted punishment to look orderly, productive, and exhausting. So the safer answer is this. The modern treadmill was not born unchanged in a prison yard, but one of its most famous ancestors became notorious there. The basic idea was brutally simple. Make a person walk, then remove the destination. A storm hits the window, and the modern treadmill suddenly looks very reasonable. It lets a runner train indoors without pretending lightning is a motivational coach. It lets a beginner walk at a steady pace without dodging traffic. In clinics, treadmill exercise stress tests are still described by organizations such as the American Heart Association because speed and incline can be controlled while a heart is monitored. The machine has real value. It also has suspicious vibes. People call it the dreadmill because it feels like exercise with the adventure carefully removed. You sweat, the numbers rise, and the wall in front of you remains deeply unimpressed. You may improve endurance. You may feel proud. But your body still understands the punchline. All that effort, and the room did not move. In prisons, that feeling was not accidental. It was the point. Walking in place made labor measurable, visible, and easy to supervise. A prisoner could not wander off. A guard could watch a row of bodies step in rhythm. The prison could count effort almost like counting sacks of grain. And sometimes there really was grain. A prison treadwheel was not a flat rubber belt under one person's feet. Picture a giant wooden cylinder, wide enough for several prisoners to stand along it. Around the outside were boards or steps. Each person held a rail or stood inside a narrow partition, then stepped upward as the wheel turned beneath them. It was like climbing an endless staircase designed by someone who had heard of stairs but strongly objected to hope. On some treadwheels, the rotation powered machinery. It could grind corn or pump water. On others, the work was only partly useful or not useful at all. The machine might simply create resistance so the climbing became harder. That difference mattered because useful labor could be defended as work. Pointless labor was harder to dress up. A prisoner could spend hours stepping and still learn no trade, build no skill, and arrive at no place, which is also a harsh review of some team-building activities. The old treadwheel turned movement into a sentence. The modern treadmill turns movement into a setting. Mechanically, those are different stories. Emotionally, the family resemblance is not subtle. A clock over the prison yard would have been much crueler than any gym timer. The daily experience varied by prison and period, but the common picture is severe. Long spells of stepping, strict supervision, little conversation, narrow divisions between prisoners, no music, no podcasts, no cheerful little mountain animation on a screen. The body moved constantly, while the mind had almost nothing to hold on to. The treadwheel turned human effort into routine, and routine was exactly what many 19th-century prison officials wanted. British punishment was changing after the late 18th century. Public punishment was increasingly criticized as chaotic and brutal. But prison reform did not automatically mean kindness. Prison reformer John Howard had helped make jail conditions a public issue with The State of the Prisons in 1777. Later reformers and officials often wanted jails to be orderly, silent, moral, and productive. Hard labor was supposed to discipline the body and, in theory, improve the soul. That theory sounds much easier when you are not the soul doing the climbing. A machine like Cubitt's treadwheel fit a system that wanted punishment to look clean, scheduled, and respectable. It made exhaustion administrative. It turned a body into a timetable. On a prison administrator's page, the treadwheel looked almost perfect. It promised control. It promised visible effort. It promised a day divided into repeatable units of exhaustion. Taxpayers could be told prisoners were working. Moral reformers could be told idleness was being crushed. Guards could supervise motion without letting prisoners roam. The device became associated with British prisons, including Brixton and Coldbath Fields in London, both often mentioned in histories of treadmill labor. These were not quirky fitness experiments hiding in the corner. Treadwheel labor belonged to a wider culture of discipline, silence, separation, and controlled routine. Supporters could explain it neatly. Hard labor discouraged idleness. It made prison unpleasant enough to deter crime. It kept prisoners occupied. If the wheel powered machinery, it could also claim a practical purpose. On a page, that argument looked tidy. In a prison yard, it looked like exhausted people climbing a wooden machine that mostly taught them how long a day could feel. A neat prison ledger can hide a lot of misery. Critics noticed the contradiction. If prison labor was meant to reform, why choose work that taught almost nothing? If punishment was meant to be useful, why connect people to a machine whose main product might be aching legs? The complaint was not just that treadmill labor was tiring. Everyone knew it was tiring. That was the product. The deeper complaint was that it was monotonous, degrading, and sometimes empty. There were also medical and humanitarian concerns. Long, repetitive exertion could be dangerous, especially for prisoners who were ill, underfed, injured, or physically unsuited to the labor. A machine can look efficient to an administrator while being cruel to the person trapped in the routine. The treadwheel made punishment clean enough to schedule, but not humane enough to defend forever. By the late 19th century, British penal thinking was shifting again. Treadwheel labor declined, and the Prisons Act of 1898 is commonly cited as part of the end of treadmill labor in Britain. It is safest to treat that law as part of a broader decline, not as a magic switch that alone ended everything overnight. Other forms of hard labor, including crank machines and shot drill, also drew criticism. The larger lesson was uncomfortable. A punishment can be orderly and still be ugly. A hospital treadmill changes the question under your feet. Once walking in place was separated from forced punishment, it became valuable in a completely different setting. In laboratories and hospitals, the question was no longer, how much misery can a prisoner endure? It became, how does the heart respond when effort rises in a controlled way? That is where Robert Bruce and Wayne Quinton come in. In the 1950s, their treadmill testing work helped develop what became known as the Bruce Protocol, a staged exercise test used to evaluate cardiovascular function. The treadmill was useful because the test could control speed, incline, and timing. The body could be monitored. Effort could be repeated in a standard way. The same basic promise that made prison officials like the treadwheel, measurable exertion, became the reason doctors could use a treadmill as a diagnostic tool. The wheel of misery put on a lab coat, and suddenly everyone acted more professional around it. Then fitness culture helped sell controlled indoor movement back to ordinary people. In the 20th century, indoor exercise became more normal, and Kenneth Cooper's book Aerobics, published in 1968, helped popularize the idea that sustained cardiovascular exercise was not only for athletes or patients. Regular people were encouraged to build it into everyday life on purpose. A treadmill fit that promise neatly. It was private, weatherproof, adjustable, and easy to place in a gym or home. This is the strange makeover. Put a person on a treadwheel in a prison yard, and it is punishment. Put a person on a treadmill in a medical lab, and it is a test. Put a person on one in a gym with a towel and a playlist, and it becomes wellness. The body may not notice the branding right away. Legs are stubbornly literal, but society notices. The setting changes the story from obedience to optimization, from sentence to subscription, from hard labor to health goal. That does not make modern treadmills bad. They help people exercise safely, recover from injury, train indoors, and measure progress. The weirdness is not that people use them. The weirdness is how completely the meaning changed while the motion stayed recognizable. A prisoner once climbed because the prison ordered it. A patient later walked because a doctor needed data. A gym member today presses start because the forecast is terrible, or because the machine has a fan, or because self-improvement occasionally looks like paying to walk in place. Everyday objects often hide older meanings, but the treadmill's past is especially rude about it. It takes one of the simplest movements humans do, walking forward, and turns it into a question. Are you being punished, tested, trained, or merely avoiding rain? The machine cannot answer. It just keeps moving under your feet, offering effort without a destination, and a final reminder that history has an alarming talent for rebranding discomfort.